Hello, I'm Paul Farmer.
And I'm Lori Waters. Welcome to this month's edition of Lockup USA. Contraband can be defined simply as any article your institution forbids inmates to have in their possession. That could include anything not issued by the institution, sold in the inmate commissary, or otherwise received through approved channels. Contraband could include anything from extra magazines in a cell to a deadly weapon. Coming up on this month's program, we'll look at the most common types of contraband found in correctional facilities. We'll also take a look at how inmates get a hold of contraband and how they move it around in the secure area. We'll see how common everyday items found in every facility can be turned into deadly weapons. And we'll get a look at some of the contraband confiscated from inmates at one of this country's most secure facilities. It's all coming up.
First, let's talk about the different types of contraband, and as we said earlier, that encompasses a wide range of articles, anything from an extra newspaper in a cell to a deadly weapon. So for the purposes of this program, we're just going to concentrate on that type of contraband which can directly affect the security of the institution.
Contraband falls into many different categories. The first would be weapons. And the most common type of weapon made in a correctional facility is a homemade knife, commonly called a shank or a shiv. And as we'll see later in the program, these can be manufactured from many different types of items found inside the facility. Other weapons could include zip guns, which can also be made from common everyday items found in the institution. Another weapon easily made involves a sock and any heavy article that can be put inside the sock, such as a bar of soap or a padlock. Homemade fire bombs or incendiary devices are another type of weapon, as are clubs made from broom or mop handles or any other available piece of wood. A razor blade and a toothbrush can be combined to form another deadly type of weapon that can be used for slashing. And it's something that can be manufactured very easily. Besides weapons, escape items are another form of contraband that pose a threat to the security of the institution. These would include homemade keys, easily made from stolen or misplaced keys. Maps are another form of escape-related contraband, whether they're regular road maps or just homemade drawings. The same for any identification papers, especially forged ones, that may be found in an inmate's possession. Other escape-related items would include handcuff keys or any type of lock picks, materials for making a dummy, any type of tool that could be pilfered from the institution's tool shop, such as wire cutters, hacksaw blades, pliers, or a screwdriver. Rope, whether it's homemade from toilet paper or the real thing, can also be used in an escape, as can any type of wire, cable, or chain. Civilian clothing found in an inmate's cell can also indicate that an escape may be planned. Another form of contraband is a type of alcoholic beverage that can be made inside the facility.
Depending on what part of the country you're from, it's either hooch or homebrew or whatever they happen to call it, punk in some places. It's made from materials and vegetables and fruits that they have, and bread that they've stolen from the kitchen, brought back to their cell. Many times they make it right in the commode. They make a still. All the parts are easily obtainable in the prison. They make their still, but there's a pungent odor to that, and the officers need to be smelling for that odor, especially around the holiday times and, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and 4th of July. And, you know, just because people are locked up does not mean that they don't observe the holidays. So they try to make the hooch themselves.
Gambling items are another form of contraband. Some facilities do allow card playing, so make sure you know your agency's policy on this. If card playing is not allowed, contraband would include playing cards, dice, gambling chips, betting slips, or any other material with no other purpose except for gambling. Anything in excess, even items allowed by the facility, should also be considered contraband.
You want to limit inmates' property in their cell because the more property they have can be fire hazard, can be more places to hide other types of contraband, specifically dangerous contraband. And also it's used in bartering. A person who has a lot of uniforms or a lot of shoes or a lot of socks or, you know, an abundance of toilet paper even, it's a bartering system within the facility, and it can be, it's a power structure, so it is contraband. People can be extorted for it, beaten up, or even killed for cigarettes.
For the corrections officer, it's necessary to be able to identify contraband and items used in making contraband in order to control it.
For this month's program, Lockup USA went to the U.S. Penitentiary at Marion, Illinois to see what type of contraband has been found there over the years. Marion is the federal government's most secure correctional facility, and over the years it's housed some of the most dangerous criminals in the world within its perimeter. And the contraband you're about to see certainly reflects that.
Okay, this is a collection of contraband that the penitentiary has accumulated over the last several years, probably 20 years. As you see, most of these are all made out of metal. There's a variety of them that comes from all over the institution, anything from, this is some pretty heavy gauge stuff that comes from back in our industries area. These are different handles on them, are made out of plastic, some are made out of T-shirts and so forth. Numbers on them indicate that they're coming from some place. When we have a real problem with identifying a lot of these different metals, especially something like this, it's got holes drilled in it. We know that's come off of something that should be fairly obvious. Same way with this. These all, our mechanical service department's real good about identifying what it is because they work around the different areas and they can identify it for us fairly quick and tell us what it's coming off of. Then we have a better idea where to look.
How do they get those so sharp like that?
They take... Back in the days that a lot of these were made, they had access to a lot of the equipment. I'm sorry to say, if the staff aren't on the job, they can get on the grinders and so on. The way they do it now with metal is they use the concrete in the cells themselves, take the concrete, scar and powder and water, and work it. But that's pretty identifiable if the officers are doing the proper shakedowns and so forth. You'll pick up where an inmate that's doing that, and then you can observe what. Fortunately, we don't have as much metal as we used to. These come out, some of these stuff comes off of heaters, that's ladles. This comes off of food services. Most of the stainless steel stuff that we have are usually made from the hospital. It's got a lot of stainless steel. It's, for example, right here, that's a fine weapon right there, and it's made out of some sort of hospital. It looks like a large set of tweezers. We have these just made out of a regular knife, come right straight out of the dining room. That's before we went into the plastic utensils. We had the regular metal knives and spoons and so forth. And every time they use something like this, it makes us a little bit smarter. We decide, well, that's not a good idea. And so it helps us.
That on the left there where your hand was, that looks like a handle to a pan or a soup pot or something?
Here?
Yeah, that right
yes,
about there.
It's probably to one of the big soup ladles or big spoons they use back in the food service area. They just break the spoon part of it off here and, of course, work that down.
And at this time, you don't have those types of instruments?
Oh, they are in our food service, but they're watched real close. And we don't, at the present time, we're fortunate we don't have institution inmates working in our food service area, so they don't actually have access to it anymore.
Now, in the middle there, those aren't metal objects. What are those?
These are made out of, it's a plexiglass type stuff that come out of our mechanical services area again. This is a good indication that the metal is getting hard to find. When you start seeing the plastic, but it means that the metal's not available. But we were at first thought that was kind of a good deal to see the plastic coming because the metal was getting sparse, but actually it's not, because this is much easier to hide. You can get through metal detectors with it, simple as that, and they're just as good a weapon. That's just as effective piece of metal as, would be just as effective as what that would be. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. And down on the bottom right there, what are those?
Okay, made out of typewriters. We were inmates in the law libraries and so forth. Have access to typewriters. Well, they were taking the typewriter rods off the top, if you look, it's numbered and so forth, and using those make a fine weapon. Here we have a zip gun made out of, it looks like it's thread, ink pen, filler, and of course there's a firing device. We don't know what's inside it. They were using matches as the software out of the matches as propellant, and zipper linings, anything that would fit in there as a propellant. Basically the same with here. Same here, it does have a metal barrel wrapped in copper wiring with a masking tape.
Was that thing actually functional?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Normally, some of the stuff they actually take out and test fire, but I don't know. I doubt that this one was, because normally when you test for them, they just blow all to pieces. That's one of the...
An officer's not going to know if it's functional or not if he comes
if he
face to
spots
face
something like
with
that, he backs off and gets hold of his supervisor, and then we'll take it from there.
What are they using for materials on the handles there?
Okay, a lot of this stuff is really obvious. Some of these are made out of just mop panels, out of buckets. We used to have the regular metal buckets with the mop panels. Make excellent ones, and they can get 4 or 5 pieces out of that. We went to plastic. Like there again, that's another little learning experience. They help us whenever we catch on to what they're doing, because it just tightens up the security a little bit more. course, that's a heavy piece of metal there. I'm not sure exactly what that came out of, but we did have a furniture factory in the back when this place initially was open, and they made metal desks. So you can imagine the kind of metal that came out of that place. They literally had cutting shears, so they could make weapons as fast as the machine would make them. To put it quite simple.
But the plastic ones you say are just as effective.
Yes, and harder to detect. Okay, as you can see, this is a ruler also made out of plastic. We'll go into the plastic area. Basically, everything swings from all of these, the metal, down to these. And I think a statement I heard a while ago was said that as the security got tighter, then the weapons quality went down. And you can obviously see that. This is a tough piece of metal that's just all been straightened. I don't know what exactly it's made out of, but it's a very crude piece of work. Here's one of our plastic utensils I was talking about a while ago, our dining room, that's been worked on in the front to sharpen all. I don't know how effective that would be. I wouldn't want to try it, but it would work. Again, here's some of our toothbrushes worked down to a point. There you see, when you see something like this, you know they're getting pretty desperate for a weapon. Here's one out of a pair of eyeglasses. There's the metal end of it. Small piece of metal. This is out of a pair of toenail clippers. You can see this hasn't been worked on. We found that one before they got it worked up. Some of these are made out of ink pens. They'll use an ink pen as a middle, start melting down a food tray or any plastic. We talked about shampoo bottles. Different shampoo bottles, over the years we found out make different grade of plastic, so to speak, and so we've used now what we think won't melt down and make weapons quite as easy. Another piece there is just an outlet for electrical outlets. Been broken in half and worked on. It's crude, but there again it would work.
Is that metal or plastic?
This is metal. This is metal. Here's another one with just a big pin melted down to a fine point there. Not very large, but there again just as effective. There's another one that's quite crude, melted down the same way. It's melted down out of possibly food trays or the other. That's metal also, but there again, it's quite crude. We're catching some of this before they ever get it developed. Hasn't been worked on here. Got just tape around the handle. And here's something that's dangerous. We've had quite a problem with those. Is a zip gun, and it's made out of paper and that looks like sheets. They were using matches and so on, as I may have spoken earlier about, as a propellant, zippers and so forth for the charge. I don't know if it'll work or not, but they have worked here. The inmates have used them on each other, and they have worked. So, or they have fired at officers with them also. By the way. Another melted down plastic. Another ink pen.
What is that? Yeah, I was going to ask what that is. There.
Here is you wouldn't think that a cellophane or ceramic bag or plastic bag would do that, but they've worked that down and melted it. This one's quite crude, but it shows you that they're always trying to make a weapon out of something. And
that's from a plastic garbage bag?
Right.
It just melted down? And
keep melting it and keep melting it, and it just keeps getting harder and harder. And if you'll notice, it's quite hard. I don't know that it could hurt you. It would need some more work, I would think, before they could actually use it. But that was in the start mold. And this one was made out of a shampoo bottle. And it's not very large, but if you notice, it's extremely hard. I mean, it is really, I couldn't break it, and it would work. Again, crude, but it would work. So we're turning up more and more of the plastic stuff, and the quality has gone down, that pleases us. But the plastic are hard to detect, and it's work on their part to get them to make an effective weapon out of it.
Now, is it true that some of these weapons were actually used to kill inmates
right.
in this facility?
If I'm not mistaken, this one was. If I'm not mistaken, that one was. And I know this one was used. This is there again is a small piece of metal because I was there when this one was used. It's not a stabbing type of weapon, but it's a slashing type, where you could cut a guy's throat, to put it quite simple. And that pretty much covers our plastic end of it. But you can just glance at this and glance at the metal weapons, and you can see that it's come a long way as far as improving. They have to be pretty hard up for weapons now to start making them out of this kind of thing, which is good.
We'll get back to the Marion display in just a few moments, but right now, let's take a look at the different ways that type of contraband gets into an inmate's possession. There are many ways that contraband gets into the secure area. First, it can come in from the outside in a variety of ways, like during contact visits.
Contact visits is a very good way for contraband to get smuggled in. It can be held in the visitor's mouth in balloons, dope. It can be put in a balloon and then transferred in a kiss, shaking hands. They could have something taped to their hands, between their fingers, under a ring. There's many ways. Contact visits are an area that really have to be closely scrutinized and very, very closely observed during the entire contact visit.
And there are other ways it comes in from the outside.
Basically, it can come in through vendors, people delivering things, even from local stores. People are paid off to put things in and get it smuggled in through boxes and things like that they know the inmates are going to ship it in. It can be thrown over perimeter fences where inmates are known to work on a daily basis. Can be set up and thrown in. You also have the occasion where officers bring in contraband for inmates, whether they're intimidated or paid off or whatever the reason. The officers have been arrested for trafficking in contraband with inmates.
And sometimes inmates try to move contraband through the mail.
Mail coming into the institution is always a problem. Many institutions open mail, search it. Legal mail, of course, must be opened in the presence of an inmate and searched just for contraband. It can't be read or anything like that. So mail is a constant problem with contraband coming in. Also, inmates going to and from court. In a jail situation, more so than a prison situation, it's the constant movement in and out of the secure facility lends itself to smuggling in contraband.
Any property received from an inmate's relatives or friends should also be carefully scrutinized and limited.
It should not be property that can be either eaten or drank. It's just not worth it. If the facility decides that they're going to sell soda pop, then they can go ahead and buy it from a local distributor. There's no need to have an inmate having soda brought in. And definitely fresh fruit. Oranges have been known to be shot full of vodka and Jack Daniels and many other kind of alcoholic beverages. So it's just not a good practice to do.
Not only is contraband brought in from the outside, but as we saw earlier, much of it originates inside the institution.
They can take toilet paper and weave it as a rope and then use it in an escape attempt. They can rip their mattresses up, rip their sheeting, bedding up to, again, use as ropes. They can take the rods from the push toilets out and use those as weapons. The facility itself lends itself to a lot of contraband. The metal flashing around fluorescent lights can be taken down and sharpened, fan blades. All these things lend themselves. So the officers have to be constantly vigilant of things. Take nothing for granted. Everything that comes in the institution, from powdered milk to jalapeno peppers, can be converted into being dangerous contraband.
The kitchen is one area in particular that provides a lot of materials for making contraband.
The cutting utensils, ladles, the big ladles that they use. Many times inmates will snap the ladle portion off, have the big metal handle, sharpen it to a point. So they should be considered and counted on a daily basis as contraband if they're missing.
Or how about a weapon made from the top of a can, such as this? These types of items can easily find their way into the inmate population if not carefully watched. Because once contraband is smuggled in or manufactured, it can be moved around the institution in a number of ways.
Many times, hall porters move contraband, trustees, quote, unquote, move contraband. It's moved that way. It can be moved passed down a whole cell block if the officers aren't paying attention. Dropped over from one tier to another in the older facilities on what they call a rat rope, which is just a magazine wrapped around some maybe braided toilet paper or different rope or something that they have found, and they just drop it over, and inside the magazine is the contraband. So it's moved through that. It's moved on meal carts. It's moved back and forth that way. As meals come out from the kitchen, contraband can be moved. So all of those things, a meal cart going out needs to be searched. A meal cart coming back in needs to be searched. A laundry cart going out needs to be searched. And on laundry carts, the metal frame that the canvas attaches to needs to be searched every time that cart moves to ensure that all of those metal prongs are there. Because I've seen it where the inmates have taken one prong off and it's about that long, and they make a weapon out of it. And no one missed it for many, many months. So things like that. You always have to be looking. You have to be as smart as they are and always be looking. Never take anything for granted. Broom handles. If a broom handle is missing, then that should be considered as dangerous contraband, and it should be accounted for. Mop handles, the mop ringers, they can be broken into pieces and turned into very dangerous weapons.
It would be an ideal situation if all contraband could just be eliminated. Unfortunately, that's not the case because inmates are ingenious and they're always coming up with new ways to smuggle it in or to make it inside.
And before we talk a little bit more about ways to control contraband, let's go back to Marion for the remainder of that demonstration. Once again, here's Lieutenant Randy Burleson.
As you can see, we'll continue on with a few of the weapons. There's one here we haven't talked about. This one's made out of wood. It's probably made out of just a small whisk broom type, sharpened down. There again would be effective. Here's a ruler that hasn't had the work done on it, but that would make a real dandy right there, so to speak.
That's something that was confiscated before they had a chance
right,
to...
he'd already had the handle worked on, but he didn't have a chance to actually get the edge on it. So this weapon appears to be one that was used in an actual assault here, and it still appears to have blood on it. A lot of these people, that when they make weapons and are really serious about taking care of business, will have a lanyard on them, and they'll tie it around their wrist, so if they really get into the heat of the battle, so to speak, they won't lose that weapon, and a lot of them use those. Down here's one made out of headphones, the metal band around the headphones. Two small weapons here. Again, they're kind of crude, but effective. Made out of a pick. This one is a plastic one. This is a real crude one made out of just a piece of metal that's been wrapped tight. Now, that's a weapon. That is huge. That's a machete type, as far as I'm concerned.
Where would a piece of metal that large come from? Any idea?
I have no idea.
That looks fairly old. I guess that's...
It is. It's a different kind of metal, almost like a bronze or a copper or something, but so I'm not certain. Good plumbing. This one here is made out of just a sheet metal. As you can see, it's real light. You'd have to hit a person in the right place for it to be real effective. Again, with some more... we'll get in. Here's one weapon that was cut from a window ledge in one of our cells that was just cut off the edge, right? As you can see in the photos, cut right down here, right down through here. And it takes quite a piece of cutting equipment to get that. And that's what I'm leading up to is some of our security contraband that we're talking about, because this had to be cut with something. As you can see, we had to use, it had to be some kind of a blade or a stainless steel or whatever. These are all cutting weapons down through here. This is the hacksaw blade, toothbrush handle. Be hard to work with. There's not much metal, not much of a hacksaw blade there, but it would work. Here's a better piece, along again with toothbrush handles. You can see the toothbrush. Another toothbrush with on the end, another piece of type of a hacksaw. This is a circular hacksaw blade. I'm not exactly sure what that's called, but very, very sharp. It cuts real well. Again, there's a couple of weapons. There's a crude one with a big handle. But this is not a weapon. This is a worn-out piece of metal. It's got a rough edge on it. It's used as a cutting tool.
So all that is used to cut other metal to perhaps make weapons? Or
make weapons or maybe attempt to escape out of the cell or out of the unit, so forth.
And the actual hacksaw blades themselves, were they smuggled into the institution, or did that originate here?
We are not sure. We don't know where they come from. Back when our mechanical service was open to inmate population, we did have hacksaw blades back there naturally, but they were under close supervision, so probably were smuggled in by inmates, and probably by this method right here, many they could have brought them in, carrying them in their rectal area. This was found on an inmate. This little capsule here contained 2 hacksaw blades, a cuff key, and a couple of small files, and he carried it around on him rectally, and very hard to detect. You almost have to x-ray them to find it.
Didn't you tell me that particular piece was found on an inmate after he had killed an officer?
That's true. This inmate murdered an officer in October, and it was found on him in November. So
1983 was
right,
that?
yes.
Right.
Another hacksaw blade. Again, down here's hacksaw blades. The handcuff keys. Handcuff keys were being made by the ink pen fillers, you know, the metal ink pen fillers. We don't use them here anymore. It's all plastic. They were making them real fast. They worked real good on peerless cuffs. Again, there's a couple of lock picks. Here, we're back on the weapons just for a second. I wanted to show you this. I think that's pretty intricate. That's quite a zip gun, quite a big bore zip gun, so to speak. I had a part with a battery pack, toggle switch. I don't know what they used to ignite it, but that's just an idea of what they can come up with.
That one looks like it probably would fire. If,
It looks good to me. I don't know if it was or not. A lot of them are test fired. Over here are some more of the security devices I'm talking about. These are handcuff keys that are for Smith & Wesson cuffs. Here's some lock picks, a zip gun. It's a pipe bomb made back in our mechanical services area. These things are extremely dangerous, and they do work.
what would the inmate use to set that off? In other words, there'd be gun match heads, I guess?
Right,
inside
match
them?
heads, or back when he probably made this, he made this back in our mechanical services area, or probably something else he could have even used for that. But once we got into our high security operation, the match heads were basically the only thing they could actually turn to. Another cutting device with a hacksaw blade melted in. That's a rather crude one, but there again, it's a hacksaw blade, and they're invaluable in our penitentiary area. Lock picks, another cutting device.
What are those lock picks? What are they made from?
These are several different items now. We do have a lot of handcuff keys that are made out of the ink pen fillers, the metal ink pen fillers. They work really well on peerless cups. And of course, we took those away too. We don't use those anymore. There's another small sharpened weapon. This is pretty interesting here. This is something that woke a lot of us up. These are actual keys that were made by an inmate that's still in this institution. These are functional. These would open. As you can see, I can show you a comparison. As you can see, they're just basically, of course, it's not the same thing, but you can see that they're very functional. This inmate could look at this key and make it. That's why these are there now. We thank him for it. It's a key shield, we call it. It covers the key up so that he don't have that opportunity, or any other inmate actually has that opportunity anymore.
What are the contraband keys there? What material are they made from?
These appear to be made out of some sort of a name tag, probably back in our printing shop area when the institution was open. These have been made years ago. These are quite old, but they were functional. They tried them on some of the areas that they thought he would use them on, and they would open doors.
Pretty scary.
Sure, so we had to start changing locks and anything around him. Him or anyone else, actually, that woke us up to the idea or the fact that he was skilled enough to do this. It's quite impressive. A few more weapons, basically the metal type. That's a general overlook of what we've got of the contraband.
Well, we certainly thank you, Lieutenant, for your cooperation. By the way, how do you discover most of this contraband? Is it shakedowns and that sort of thing?
Constant shakedowns, but I think you have to count on your staff to be aware that contraband's always around, and we count on them. If you've got good staff, you're going to turn up with things like this, and fortunately we do.
Obviously, the types of contraband we've seen displayed in this program would be a serious threat to the security of any institution. Keep in mind, all of those items were once in the hands of inmates. Contraband may never be eliminated, but it can be effectively controlled by the alert corrections officer.
The best way to control contraband is through regular but unannounced shakedowns of inmates, their living areas, and any other place in the institution that inmates have access to. When it comes to controlling contraband, it's also up to each and every individual officer to take some initiative to reduce the flow of contraband.
Officers have to be constantly searching and know. The key thing is to notice that something is missing. If it's part of our own facility, search the clothing, search the inmate, search the vehicles, search the cells, search the common areas, search the kitchen, everything. So it should be a constant thing that officers, and even if it isn't built into the schedule, officers on their own and line supervisors can ensure that these searches are done. Now, some are done more in depth than others, but some are done as you walk down a hallway. So all of those things, and they're not schedule type things, they're just routine type of things that you can do on a daily basis to ensure that you're doing the best you can to reduce the flow and introduction of contraband.